All right, so let's go back to Wisconsin. Although it is a national fight that we're going to be talking about, fought case to case here in the state of Wisconsin. And Luke Berg from the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. We love the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. Follow them on Twitter. Follow Luke on Twitter. Follow Skylar and the whole team, because you will learn a lot. And Luke is standing by the Middleton Ford hotline to talk about a case from a small town in Wisconsin. Even in small town Wisconsin, national gender politics comes a calling. Welcome to the show, Luke.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
So here we've got a teacher in Argyle, Wisconsin, right? I've got the town name correct, which is It's a small city in Wisconsin. And this teacher was told that the policy of the Argyle schools, again, surely the Argyle School Board wasn't sitting around thinking about this, is that teacher is going to have to affirm gender transition based on a student's desire. What happened?
Yeah, so the policy of the school was that all teachers have to use names and pronouns of transgender students, and the teacher that we represent had a religious objection to that. He just feels like calling a girl by a boy's name and boy's pronouns would be something untrue, and he just feels uncomfortable saying that. And so he asked his school for an accommodation if he could find a way to avoid doing that. And initially the school said okay and allowed him to, he just found a way to call on students without using their names. He would point to them or nod at them or whatever. And that worked for a while, but eventually the school district changed their mind and withdrew the accommodation and basically said, nope, sorry, we're not going to accommodate your religious beliefs. You have to do this. And he said, I'm not willing to. So he served out the rest of his year, and then they didn't renew his contract, basically effectively firing him at the end of the school year. And so we are bringing a case on his behalf against the school district under Title VII, which requires employers to accommodate religious beliefs and the Wisconsin and United States Constitution. All
right. So I looked up Argyle. It's a village in Lafayette County, population 857. That's what it says. Population, small population.
Right.
How did the school district in Argyle, in a small, little bitty town in Wisconsin, I mean, does anybody know what caused them to create this policy that clearly was going to force people with sincere religious objections to violate their faith for their employment?
No, I wish I knew the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that question. We may find it out in the process of litigation where this came from and sort of what the source of it is. Although, you can bet the Biden administration's new Title IX rule is certainly in the background of all of this. At the time this happened, it hadn't been announced yet, but, it was coming and everybody sort of knew where the Biden administration was going on this. So that could have been part of what's influencing it. But, the sad thing is that we need to learn to live together. And, it's sort of what happened to live and let live, right?
No, you're not allowed. You're not allowed. And you right. And the thing is, it's never been about tolerance. It has never been about accommodation, because if it were about tolerance and accommodation, then that man, the teacher in Argyle, again, population 857, so we're talking about not the biggest school district on the planet here, and I'm betting the information came from DPI and not from the local school board. Incidentally, the local school board should get involved here. The local school board can have an enormous impact by saying, no. You're not going to be able to have that policy any longer because another teacher may find themselves at risk of discipline under that policy. And plus, it's an expensive lawsuit because we actually have to go to court. And Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty attorneys are talented. And so we're probably going to lose. And we're probably going to have to pay this teacher back pay. And again, small school district. Budgets are small. But it's not about tolerance. It's not about accommodation, because you can accommodate students who are gender confused by having, bathrooms that can be private, by allowing them to, express themselves as long as there isn't a dress code, et cetera. And teachers can be sympathetic and they can be and they can worry about those students, but to force someone to accede to a reality that isn't there, that's what is demanded of people, and that's what this teacher experienced.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that that's where we're at, but that certainly, especially on the transgender issue, that seems to be where the left is right now. That if you disagree, it's not just enough that we will disagree with you. We actually have to force compliance. And I don't have a problem with a school district if it, as a general policy, that we want teachers to call students by their preferred name and pronouns. But if you have a teacher who has a sincere religious objection to that, we should also be able to accommodate that and find a way to work with that teacher. And our students need to be able to learn that, and when they go out in the real world, they're going to face people who don't have the same beliefs as them. And how can we find a way to be civil and kind and
no,
live
we don't
together
care.
Peaceably?
Destroy, destruction. You're dead naming them.
Right.
See, this is the ideology, because this isn't about a diagnosis. This is about an ideology, a political ideology. If this were about a diagnosis, you'd have maybe one or two kids every couple of years that you would have to contend with. It would be very easy to accommodate them. Teachers would not have to be forced to, change every time a child decides to change the way they feel about themselves. I mean, that's not guidance. That's not education. That is just silly.
Right.
And it was never the case in the past. You could always, of course, be understanding and kind. But again, if there were a psychological or medical diagnosis or medical determination that was made about a student, that's not hard to deal with. This is about you change everything for me, or in the case of these administrators, you change everything, including your faith system, or you're fired. You must acquiesce to everything or you're fired. And so that's not about, there's no way to bridge a gap where one group of people demands that you celebrate and say and affirm everything they believe, and another group of people just want to be left alone. It's just that's just two incompatible worldviews.
Right. It certainly is, and unfortunately, it's just popping up over and over again in more and more places, and it's sad, especially in a school district the size of Argyle, which I imagine has a hard time finding teachers. And our client was a well-loved, beloved teacher, and it's sort of sad that they forced him to leave his job or violate his religious belief. That's a position that no teacher should be put in, but unfortunately, that's one that he was put in.
Indeed. And so, we got to pick a side here. You have to pick a side. Do you pick the side that says we got to figure out how to live together, and you can't keep demanding people get fired or have their livelihoods completely destroyed, or are, dead named literally on social media, or canceled from their banks, or ostracized? You can't keep that. I mean, so what side are you going to pick? The side that says you got to destroy everybody who disagrees with you, or the side that says we got to figure out how to live together? I say we pick a side, and that's how we present it to people.
Yeah, and obviously we know which side we fall on, and we will defend people anytime this comes up where government tries to force somebody to disagree with their beliefs or impose their beliefs on everyone. That's not the basis that our country was founded upon, and that's not what our Constitution requires. It's not what our laws require.
No,
so I hope we can win for this teacher. But
It's a federal case, so you're going to have a better chance than going before our Wisconsin Supreme Court. This is viewpoint discrimination. It's religious discrimination. It's clear. But what if you're the teacher, Luke? I'm going to ask because I can imagine that there are teachers out there who have not been willing to push back against the policy, but they object to the policy. They're just afraid. Do they have to wait till they get fired?
They have to wait till there's a threat of that, and then they can go forward. But, I think, to your point, I think there's a lot of people who are self-censoring and or who are trying to avoid the situation any way they can because, litigation is expensive and time-consuming and, as you know, not fast. So even if we ultimately win for this teacher, there are years of his life that he could have been teaching that he isn't teaching because of what happened to him. And, anybody ex ante thinking, am I prepared to go through that? In some ways, the the process is the punishment, and that's part of the problem.
Does it show that he is non-compliant with district rules or some such thing in his dismissal, or is he at least?
And as far as we know, it was just this policy of requiring all teachers to use names and pronouns of any transgender students, notwithstanding their religious beliefs.
If you are someone out there and you're facing something similar here, folks, then we encourage you to reach out to Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, because litigation is expensive. Happily, you're a nonprofit. Which is why we also ask people, if you're if of a means, to make a nice donation to the group so that you can keep doing what you're doing. But it's will-law.org, because I've got a feeling that this fellow isn't the only one who is either threatened with dismissal or already been dismissed in the process of the pursuit of an absolutely ideology that is incompatible with freedom.
Yeah, not by a long shot, but I hope we can put a stop to it.
Thanks very much for jumping on the show today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.